I was in debt. I had business. I was making money, but I was spending more money. I, was trying to live this lifestyle, right, that showed everyone that I was happy. And that was a massive wake up call to me. Like, if anything happens to me, what do I leave my family in? And I then realized that it was not about the money you make, it's how you make it, right? And what you do with it, and who you help. And that massively put things into perspective for me. Like, I'm just so lucky to have what I have. And instead of just trying to chase money and do something that you're a career that you're not very happy in, strip back your expenses, strip back your lifestyle, and do something that kind of makes you happy.
Hi everyone, Asim here again, your host and the founder of Healingclouds. Today we're in conversation with Paul McGregor. Paul is a mental health speaker and author who aims to normalize mental health conversations. In 2009, he lost his father to suicide when he was 18. What followed was grief, depression, anxiety, and feeling like he had to suffer in silence and deal with it alone. Now, 11 years later, he shares his journey to help others struggling with their mental health. His work has been featured on Huffington Post, Sky News, BBC, and he has spoken at companies such as Warner Brothers, Lloyds TSB, and the FA. He is also a founder of Every Mind. Every Mind uses digital technology to support mental health in the workspace because every mind matters. Paul, thank you so much for being with us today.
No worries. How are you?
Good, man. Thank you. How are you?
Good. Yeah, good. Getting used to working from home and looking like I've been kidnapped, but yeah, things are good. Things are good.
I know. We're going to hopefully speak about this at the end, but I quite enjoy your videos on TikTok. By the way,
You following me on TikTok?
Yeah, I've been actually trying my best to get onto TikTok, but I mean, I commend you for being on it. Like, fantastic.
It's a great platform. Like, I was debating going on it for about a month or two, and then I finally threw myself in, and the growth has been phenomenal. But more importantly, like, the impact on that platform, like, it's the next generation, which is what I much prefer. So yeah, TikTok's fun as well.
I love it, man. Carry on doing what you're doing. Absolutely.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so I'm going to get right into it, Paul. I mean, you often mention that your dad's death by suicide was a total surprise. And I feel it's so relevant because depression has so many faces. Some of the happiest faces could be living in total darkness. What would you say about that?
Yeah, massively agree. Like, as you kind of said, my dad's suicide was a big shock to us all. I always kind of explain it that he had everything on paper. Like, if you look from the outside in, he was a full-time engineer. He had a part-time physiotherapy business. He had a family. He had lots of friends. He was a very good runner, very good athlete, sort of a bit of money in the bank, savings. It was tick, 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 tick. Academic, psychology degree, meditated, everything. And just very quickly, without us really seeing any kind of signs, just broke very, very quickly. And just behaviors changed dramatically. And it was so quick from him changing behaviors to going to the doctors, which was like the day after, getting antidepressants. His first attempt was about 7 days after that. So as you can imagine, it was so quick for us. And I always look back on that actually and say to ourselves, if he died on that suicide attempt, it would have been so much harder to deal with because it was that quick. But what then happened is after that was, my dad did end up, being sectioned and being in a psychiatric ward. And that was like our exposure to mental illness, seeing my dad, who, to be honest with you, looked okay in this environment, with people with borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia, different types of mental illness. But yeah, obviously losing him was that happened 6 months after his breakdown. It was a massive shock to us all. And I think, as you've rightly said, it doesn't have a face. It doesn't matter what someone looks like or what they've achieved or their academic status or the money they put in the bank. Really, it can affect anyone, and we're not immune to mental illness. And that's something that, I'm trying to do, and I'm sure you're trying to get across as well.
So how was the aftermath like? I mean, and how did you impact not only you, but your entire family?
The aftermath was, I talk very openly about it now, but you can imagine, I didn't speak about it for a good couple of years. Very much for me, it was about the day that it happened. we were all sort of me, my mum, my nan, my granddad, my brother. We were all there, and I got emotional, I got angry, I was punching the kitchen counter, and then I remember vividly, like, then about 3 hours later, me and my brother are ordering sort of a takeaway because we need something to eat, and we're in this sort of takeaway picking up our food, and we're both looking at each other and we're like, wow, like, life is moving on just like that. Where 3 hours, 4 hours before, like, we just got told that we'd lost our dad to suicide. And the way that I dealt with it was very much as most people do with mental health, is like, you bottle it up, you suppress those emotions. I went sort of into a nightclub 6 days after, I drank lots. I started a business, which was great, but that business meant that I could just bury my head in the laptop, work. As you kind of can imagine, distraction, because you're just scared of all of those emotions coming back up. But yeah, it was tough for all of us to deal with. And the one thing that I always kind of focus on is how suicide grief is very difficult, because there's a lot of unanswered questions. I'm honest about this. I was angry at myself. I had to forgive myself because, the day before it happened, I was with him. I felt that he wasn't right. I felt like I needed to do more, but I was tired. Does that make sense? It was all of these kind of the guilt that's attached to it. I was angry at him for it, because I didn't understand depression. I didn't understand how he could do it. I was confused. Did he love us? Like, we were like, was he ever happy? Was like, my whole 18 years a lie? And that first couple of years was very difficult because you're battling with all of those questions. And what really helped me was therapy, going and finding that therapist that was a massive help to me, a lady called Anne. She finally got me to speak about it. And then that's when the process started of forgiving myself, forgiving my dad, understanding mental health, understanding my dad felt like he was a burden to us. He loved us, but he was unwell. And all of those kind of questions and that pain started to be healed. And then I could start to move forward. But yeah, like, looking back, it was still a good couple of years to even talk to someone about it, which was difficult.
I think one of the biggest perhaps problems is guilt, and then guilt then leads on to depression and anxiety and everything else. So I mean, and guilt is a big one as well, especially guilt for someone who's not there. I mean, you really can't speak to that person anymore and let go of that guilt. So I mean, what was your coping mechanism when it came to forgiving yourself or letting go of the guilt?
So Anne, the lady who helped me, she's very holistic, spiritual, and when I say spiritual, I never went to church. I still don't go to church. I wouldn't class myself as religious, but spirituality for me was, she started putting books in my hand of Wayne Dyer, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Neil Donald Walsh, Eckhart Tolle, all of these kind of books. I was about 22 when she started to do this, and for some reason I really gravitated towards it. And Power of Now was a big book that helped me with the whole guilt side of it, because I fell into depression because it was very much living in the past, wanting to see my dad. I should have done this, I should have done that. Well, why has this happened to me? That whole kind of, victim kind of mindset as well, which is a dark place to be in. And I got into really, really dark places because, again, one of my fears still is I'll end up like my dad. I was always compared to him. I was always, you're sensitive like your dad. You look like your dad. You're sporty like your dad. Yeah. And then when my dad, was like the guy I idolized,
role model,
from a male perspective, ends his life. You're like, well, is that going to be me? And I think a lot of that dark place was trying to get, in a way, in the headspace that maybe he was in, so I could understand his decision, or how he ended his life. So a lot of living in the past led to the depression, and then at the same time, a lot of anxiety that I had around then came from, I will never get married without my dad. I'll never have kids without my dad. Because you're then like just focused on the future of what could be. And The Power of Now, it took me a couple of times to read it, to really grasp it. And as you probably, by the look of your reaction, you've maybe read it. It's such a simple principle, right? But applying it is so difficult.
Absolutely.
But that's just, I just kept trying. And that's something that I still try and do today, is, just try and stay present and not try and control the uncontrollable. Like, I can't bring my dad back. I can't change that. I can't change the fact that I'm now married. I got married without my dad there. I've had kids without my dad. My dad will never be a granddad. I can't change any of that. And I think it's just trying to stay present and you know, yeah, that for me has definitely helped as well when it comes to guilt.
I think you're spot on when you said, I mean, it's a very simple principle for, us being in the present moment, but way easier said than done. I actually read The Power of Now a couple of times as well. And it took me, that much time to actually start applying. And honestly, I don't, we're all human beings. I also obviously have my own demons, and as much as I try to apply to be present in the moment, but you do swerve off, but just being mindful about it, I mean, that is what's important. And then just bringing yourself back, and like you rightly said, trying to control what you can and not what you can't, because I mean, there's so many external factors that is happening around you, but there's only so much you can do. I mean, I think trying to control your headspace is more important than anything else.
Yeah, 100%. And I've learned as well, it's about just doing your best. Like you said, I read all of these books, and I fell into. I'm very much like my dad. My dad was very obsessive, and I think a lot of that led to his demise. Now I've got a deeper understanding of OCD, for example. I'm not saying that my dad had OCD, but there's been people that I've spoken to that have suicidal ideation, intrusive thoughts, and that's linked to their OCD. My dad was very obsessive, right? He was obsessive in the fact that he had to go for a run every morning, every afternoon, and I just saw that as my dad being like a dedicated person, right? And I've got a bit of that obsessiveness trait, which then for me means that, as you said, I'm trying to control sometimes stuff that is uncontrollable, and I found over the course of the last couple of years, I got into this trap of just wanting to improve, like just wanting to get better, reading this book, looking up to this, doing this routine. And then you find yourself beating yourself up when you're not doing the things that you need to be doing, or you feel like you need to be doing, right? So for me, what I've learned over the last 2 or 3 years is, maybe I'd say a year, is also just do your best. Like, as you said, we're all human beings. I've still got demons, like you've got demons. Sometimes I'm sitting there like feeling guilty and dwelling on the past, and sometimes I'm worried about the future. But it's that awareness of knowing, okay, I'm going to try and bring it back, and not beating yourself up when you are kind of off that path of feeling as good as you possibly can as well.
And I think it's very important to address something here as well, Paul, and I'm sure you'll agree with me. Especially with social media these days. And, I think, I started off the conversation by saying, it's fantastic what you're doing on TikTok, but it is more towards the younger generation as well, wherein we tend to compare ourselves to other people. And I think that is completely wrong, because, I would watch you on TikTok and I would think, how, you're brave, you're doing this and you're doing that. And perhaps I'm falling short. I mean, an exact example, I've been trying to go onto TikTok for quite some time now, but it's just difficult, right? But then I'm just it is wrong for me to compare myself to you or anybody else on social media, just because everybody's different. So be kind to yourself. I think that is important, and listen to your mind, listen to your body, and just go at your own pace. If it's self-recovery, if it's you're trying to do something else, I think that is really important.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, even if the TikTok example is true, is because I beat myself up because I'm not at the same level as someone else.
There you go. There you go.
So like, it's so true. Like, you might say, oh, I want to be here. And then I'm constantly like, oh, I want to be here. And as you said, social media is that constant comparisons. And let's be honest, what you see on social media is typically a highlight reel anyway, right? So, I'm not putting me shouting at my kids on there because they're being naughty. I'm putting a nice photo of me and my kids on there and making it look like, I'm a perfect dad. So yeah, and then also, like you said, with comparisons, is I'm sure there's areas of your life that you're happy with. Like you probably, I know you said you miss the gym and stuff like that. So that might be an area of your life that you're happy with. So you're probably not comparing yourself to others when you're happy in that moment. Does that make sense?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Like you said, comparisons on social media are always a losing battle, because we're only going to compare the areas that we're unhappy with. But yes, I mean, like you said, you alluded to, social media, I think, is that double-edged sword. It can be hugely positive. Like the work I'm doing, even this right now, probably wouldn't reach people without social media, 20, 30 years ago. So, I'm amazed that I can grab my phone now, do a quick 1 minute video, put it on TikTok and reach, 5,000, 1,000, 100 people, whatever. Like that for me is amazing. But with that comes, as you said, comparisons, online bullying, lots of negatives as well. I think if we can educate ourselves on social media a little bit more, we can hopefully deal with it a little bit more too.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that, you also have your insecurities. You're also, looking at other people who probably have many more followers than you. So I think that is important for all of us to be aware of. And secondly, I mean, yes, it is a double-edged sword, but we can't, deny the benefits that social media also brings to us. I mean, one of the biggest avenues is, you can use it for good. One of the things that you're doing, obviously, is using it for speaking up. Talking about speaking up, Paul, you are a big advocate. I mean, you've been speaking up on, from LinkedIn to TikTok to all the other social media places. What would you say? I mean, how would you say has speaking up helped you, and in your whole healing process? And why also? I mean, the follow up to that: why is it important if it has helped you?
Yeah, it helps because this is very meaningful to me, and my prior business was, I was creating a lot of content. I was in the sort of fashion industry, and even though I liked the business side of it, it was purely business, right? It was purely sort of let's try and make money from this project. Whereas I never thought I would say this, but when you have purpose and meaning aligned with what you're doing, it really drives me. It really makes me feel amazing. And this for me is a huge purpose that I have. To initially started off by helping people like my dad. If there's people in my dad's situation, like I want to try and help them. Then that kind of turned into, actually, it's not just men that might be suicidal. This is also helping the mums that have lost their sons, the wives, whatever. And that then translated into just everyone in general who's struggling with mental health. But the biggest reason for me to do the work that I'm doing actually is my two boys now. And I just think of the next generation, which then puts patience on my mind, because like if I want to help them, I know it's going to take 10, 20 years. I want to help my grandkids. That's going to take even longer, right? So that keeps me going. So definitely having the meaning has helped me. And I think from a selfish point of view as well, just helping others is amazing for your mental health.
Yeah.
As you probably know as well, it's, I think if I help someone, and views aside, we all get caught up in views aside, whatever aside, just one person sends me a message that says like, that video stopped me from doing this. Or I had a comment the other day, or a message the other day saying she hadn't, this girl, she was probably about 14, 15 on TikTok. She hadn't self-harmed for 6 weeks because she's been watching my videos.
Wow.
And like I get goosebumps now, right?
That's so powerful. Yeah.
And like, I don't get that often, but it's whenever I do get that, I'm like, wow, like this is the reason why. So I think from a selfish point of view, like that makes me feel good, right? And I'm glad that I'm helping people. So speaking out has definitely helped me. The negatives to it though is very much the long-term effect on it, but it does sit on my mind sometimes. It's like I'm always reliving it, right? So in a way, I'm reliving it. I'm telling the story, especially when I do like my longer presentations. I'm telling the story how it happened. And sometimes, like around Mental Health Awareness Week, I'll sometimes do 9 or 10 presentations in space of a couple of days, and sometimes it just drains you. And I think even though I can tell it, I think there's definitely an emotional impact of me telling it every time and reliving it every time. So yeah, I'm also wary of that. So I kind of try and put myself first. And if I do feel like I'm struggling or it's sort of affected me, I'll take like a couple of days off and refresh and try and then go back at it as well. But yeah, like helping others is just amazing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talking about helping others, and especially when you're comparing your previous business to what you're doing right now, I honestly believe, and I read this somewhere, if you want to earn $1 million, try and find a way to help 1 million people, right? So, and it's so true, because, once you found that, purpose, and you're really doing it with with a real clear, intention, you do attract the right people and the right circumstances, and then things just start falling into place. I think it's beautiful, because I was in, before Healingclouds, I was in real estate. I bought properties, I sold properties, I did a lot of that. And yeah, there was a lot of money, but nothing compared to the satisfaction that I get, from what I'm doing today. So I completely resonate with what you're saying. But, and that just changes your perspective as well.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
I mean, how you look at not just life, business, and just everything around you, because, business eats up most of your life anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. And a big lesson that I've had in the last couple of years is that whole perspective element. Again, there's certain moments, and I think adversity leads to resilience a lot of the time as well. So like, obviously what went through with my dad, and then there was a couple of other things, and still, like, when I put that into perspective, I'm still so grateful that I had an amazing dad for 18 years, right? Where lots of people didn't have that. It took me a long time to get to that mindset, but I do feel very grateful for it. But about it's coming up to 3 years ago. 3 years ago, my brother, 2 years older than me, he was my best man at my wedding. I got married just under a week before this happened. We were all in Italy, got married in Italy, came back on the Saturday. On Tuesday, he had an accident at work, which left my brother brain damaged. And long story short, we got a call to say he had a head injury. Some steel fell from a hoist, landed on him, and we went up to the London hospital where he was. He'd been airlifted there with like an overnight bag. Like me and my mum expecting like concussion, because he was still conscious when they called us, and got kind of called into a side room, and they kind of said, it was the worst skull fracture they'd seen. He was in a coma. And kind of long story short, my brother nearly died, and then he spent 11 and a half months in hospital, right? Going from, the brain is an amazing thing, because he went from being in a coma. The scans, they were like, this isn't good. The scans were showing that he would either die or he would just be in a completely sort of vegetized state for the rest of his life. And even like, we're in 2018 then, and we were like, just tell us something. We can't, because everyone's different. Every brain's different. Every brain heals differently. And he started slowly to wake, and then my brother couldn't see for 3 months. Couldn't talk, couldn't eat, couldn't anything. And then slowly started getting better. And I say this now because now, my brother's been out of hospital. It was 2 years yesterday, and he is the same brother that I had. Wow. So like mentally, like he's got the same sort of sense of humor. He remembers everything. What he has lost is his physical ability. So he's in a wheelchair. My mum's now his full-time carer. But even with that, he goes to physio every single day, and he's so driven and determined. And he's gone from like not being able to even move like a finger to being able to sort of stand with some support, walk with some support. Wow. Like the guy's an inspiration, right? But the reason why I tell that story is because that was the catalyst of me stepping away from that business and doing mental health stuff. Because prior to that, I was in debt. I had business. I was making money, but I was spending more money. I, was trying to live this lifestyle, right, that showed everyone that I was happy. And that was a massive wake-up call to me. Like, if anything happens to me, what do I leave my family in? And I then realized that it was not about the money you make, it's how you make it, right? And what you do with it, and who you help. And that massively put things into perspective for me. Like, I'm just so lucky to have what I have, and instead of just trying to chase money and do something that you're a career that you're not very happy in, strip back your expenses, strip back your lifestyle, and do something that kind of makes you happy. So that's a long-winded answer to that question, right? But
but it's fantastic.
I wanted to share it.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, because I mean your story is already so powerful. Honestly, I didn't even know about you, brother, and this is just, I mean, it's just amazing, to have the mindset that you have after going through all the adversities. But then, like you rightly also said, it is the adversity which has now put you in the position that you are.
Exactly.
However, it is also I mean, people could swing both ways. In essence, I mean, you had that mindset. You made a positive change to your life. Unfortunately, a lot of people, are not, that strong, or that or don't have that positive mindset, and could end up, in some sort of addiction, or could end up even, self-harm, or suicide. I mean, it can even lead to that. So first of all, I'm glad that you've, you are in this side of the spectrum. But then, what would you say is your trigger point? I mean, a lot of people would just give up. I mean, why did you not give up, and why did you, take this point where you wanted to make a change?
It's a really good question, and as you was talking, then I was thinking about it as well. But I try and share this message, like when that happened to my brother, like when it happened to my dad, all of those moments, I didn't have that mindset then, right? So even when it happened to my brother, I got into a really low place. I literally just got married, and then here we were. Everything was kind of going downhill, and I'm trying to support my mum, and my mum wasn't in a good place. And yeah, in that moment, I was in a very, very dark place, but just trying to get on. But I learned from, like, even me and my mum said that my mum had, my mum dealt with my dad very differently, and we both learned so much from it. So then when it happened to my brother, we were both in quite good places, right? So we had that toolbox of, like, I'm feeling rubbish today, so I need to go for a run. I'm feeling rubbish today, so my mum would, like, walk the dog or whatever it is. So we can, like, do little small wins just every day before we go up to the hospital and before we face reality of, like, seeing my brother laying there. And I think, like, the mindset that I've got now comes after all of that's happened. But I would say if you are in that moment, it is literally just holding on to, like, any kind of hope that you have, right? And I often think about my dad, and this is the sad part of I think anyone who we lose to suicide is they don't want to die, right? They just cannot see a way of living anymore with the mental pain they've got. So it's about giving them that, like, 1% of hope, and you keep fighting, keep going, and who knows where you might get to. So I think that's something that I've probably done naturally, is, like, all of those really low moments. There's obviously been a bit of hope that's sort of said to me, keep going. And then it does pass. And I used to hate when people would say to me, oh, time's a healer, time will make it better. Because you don't want to hear that in that moment, because you just want it to go away now, right? I don't want to go away in 5 years' time. I want it to go away now. But I think just holding on to that hope and knowing that it can pass kind of keeps you going. So yeah, that's the way that I'd probably see it.
And perhaps closure is also important for the healing process. Have you had a closure? And if you did, what has helped you get that closure? And what can others do to get that closure as well?
I think it comes back to perspective. Like the closure for me was understanding my dad's depression and understanding suicide a bit more. Because again, like, when I was in that negative place, it was all of those unanswered questions that I spoke about. So closure comes from putting into perspective of knowing that my dad was very unwell, of, as you said, knowing that I cannot control it, I cannot change it. So that for me has definitely led to closure. But I'd be lying if I said I'm just boom, I've dealt with it and it's done. There's so much more that kind of trickles in. It's definitely affected kind of my overall experience. It's definitely affected the way that I deal with certain things. I definitely still carry the fear of ending up like my dad. There's certain moments as well now that trigger me. It's things like my granddad's still alive, right? My granddad's my dad's dad, and my dad was an only child. My granddad's 94, nearly 95.
Wow.
And now he's got carers, and, like, me and my brother is next to kin. So obviously I go around and see my granddad quite a lot. And my granddad's always been like, he was running until he was 91. He was driving. He was always that kind of, he was just like an amazing, amazing guy. But now he's lost a lot of his movements, lost a lot of his capabilities, and he's losing his mind a little bit. And he calls me Neil, right, sometimes, which is my dad's name. And that messes with me. It's because it's like, Neil, come and do this. And then he goes, how are the boys? I've got 2 little boys. And me and my brother, we're my dad's 2 little boys.
Oh.
So he's like, how are the boys? How's Paul and Stephen? And I'm like, he thinks that I'm dad again. So it's a very, very, there's moments like that. Even moments that I worry about. My dad died when he was 45. Like, when I get to that moment, it's in my mind now. I'm 15 years off that, but it's in my mind now that when I get to that moment, how am I going to feel? Like, this was the moment that my dad ended his life. So yeah, like, I've got closure. I feel like I've dealt with it a lot better than I did before, but there's still, there's still moments that still definitely impact me as well.
That's amazing. I mean, one thing I want to tell you is that, yeah, you're 30, but you're old soul. I don't know if it's all the circumstances of your life,
Yeah, it probably is.
but you do not sound like a 30-year-old. So
It probably is.
kudos to you on that.
Thank you.
Well, Paul, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It is extremely empowering, and I'll tell you, it is actually going to uplift and empower a lot of people within our team as well, because unfortunately we've had suicide within our team members' families and friend circles. So it's for sure going to resonate with everybody within our team, but hopefully a lot of people who are out there and struggling from suicide and other such issues in within their families. So once again, thank you so much for sharing your story. But before I let you go, Paul, could you tell us how can we find your company and how can we find you?
Yeah, so Every Mind at Work, we're a digital platform supporting businesses and their employees. That's just everymindатwork.com. And then personally, you can go to pmcgregor.com or reach out on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all of that's pmcgregor.com.
Thank you so much, Paul.
No
Please
worries.
keep doing what you're doing. It's just amazing. It's really
likewise. And thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Paul. Take care.
No worries.
All right.
Good stuff, man.
That was fantastic.
That was really good. Yeah, you're a good interviewer. I want to ask you about Healingclouds actually.
Yeah.
So when did you start it?
I'm just going to quickly stop.